Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today the reel of the day I'll be working on is a Daiwa Whisker reel. But this one to me is very unusual. I haven't seen this one, and I can't find any information on it. It's really unusual. So the backstory to this is I was at a local flea market and just walking around seeing if I can buy some essentials like packing tape and the like. And this reel was sitting on one of the vendors' tables. And I took a look at it. First glance, it was like, wow. And then second glance was like, what is this? And I can't find a schematic on it or anything. This is not the traditional Whisker Tournament SS. And I'm going to bet that this is kind of an early version of it, but I don't know. So we're going to take this apart. We'll see what we got and if there's any similarities. But it does read Whisker on the case, and it does read it on the spool. So I'm kind of surprised with that, and it does say made in Japan. So my guess is late 70s, early 80s. It's got a graphite spool, but it's got a metal body as best I can tell. And well, let's take it apart, see how it performs and kind of what it is. So to start, we're going to take off all the exterior pieces, and as I do, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like fishing reels, if you like how to repair them, if you like to learn about them. Maybe you have one that you're trying to tune up. Whatever it is, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to the channel because I cover all of that and more. And if you do subscribe to the channel, please use that notification button. That'll help you see when I'm posting, what I'm posting, and well, you can make a decision as to whether you want to watch that or not. So this has got a very deep, dark blue case, and as those of you that know the Whisker line know that most of that is a black case and a gold spool. And also on this little extension off of the reel arm that I call as a bang bail, this bail fires by being open, hitting that piece and tripping. Well, the Whisker line has a kind of a spinning wheel here that assists in a smooth operation of the bail. This one does not have that. So again, very unusual reel. And well, let's get started. We've taken off the spool. We should be able to go into the case now. We'll remove the handle by turning the handle screw on the opposite side to remove that. We're going to turn that in a counterclockwise manner. Then we should be able to pull out the handle. And overall, this reel is dirty. Having said that, if this has got a spiral drive inside of it, I probably got a good deal. If it doesn't have a spiral drive inside of it, I probably got well, maybe I overpaid by $1 or $2. We're going to find out. My guess is that we'll see very shortly what's going on with this reel. So this is about a 60 size reel. I didn't see a model number on that. I just saw a Whisker. I didn't see a number, and I've gone into the Daiwa schematics. I can't find this reel. I thought maybe initially there was some tags on here, but that doesn't appear to be the case. I don't see any kind of residual glue or anything that would say that the tags fell off, but I could be wrong. Maybe they fell off. I would say somebody had cleaned them, but you know what? It's so dirty there that there's such a large amount of grease here that I can't believe somebody would have just cleaned off that. Well, here's our moment to figure out what's going on inside the reel. Well, it's clean, it has a ball bearing, and it has an older technology. This technology almost reminds me of the Ryobi kind of setups, the early Silver Series reels. It's got a case inside. It says E0061. Maybe I can look that up as a part number, kind of do my Sherlock Holmes off of that. All right, we're going to take this off and service it and see what the rest of the reel is made out of. We can remove, hopefully we can remove ball bearings. Oh, there you go, ball bearings off. I'm going to spray that with WD-40. There's a lot of old grease on there. Now we should be able to remove the arm. And when you do this, take a picture here. One of the things you'll notice is it's kind of got a matte finish on the crosswind arm here, and it's got a very shiny surface on that. The shiny surface was facing down. So when you go to reinstall, make sure that the matte finish is up. This has got a carrier in it. It's a long pin, and that's going to seat in the track in the back. So make sure you take that out and put that in a safe place. Now I use my safe places is a parts tray I put all the pieces that I take off of the reel in that tray, and that tray helps me to keep track of where the parts are when it's time to reinstall. We're going to take the axle shaft off next. And we'll do that by removing this screw here. And most of the time I'll tell you, note the orientation on this crosswind block because it can be flipped and the like. Do that, take pictures. It's always a good way to have a physical reminder of the pieces and the orientations and the parts you took off. In this case, I don't think we'll have any kind of issue with this thing being installed incorrectly because of the way that this stud kind of sticks out here. Hold the crosswind block and pull up on the axle shaft and out. That's how you remove the axle shaft. I'm just going to use some light steel wool. That steel wool will help me clean off any debris that's on there. It felt a little rough coming through there. And then we'll come back and wipe that clean, put that in my parts tray. With the axle shaft out, we can remove the crosswind block. I'm going to put that right next to the bearing for the moment. And the main gear should come off now. Well, I'm thinking we either have a bearing. So we have a 3-ball bearing reel, so that's a pretty good setup there. The shim washer came off the front here. You want to make sure that you know that exists. I'm going to put that right on the crosswind block because that's where that belongs. And we have a reel that hasn't been serviced in an awful long time. But we're going to do the same thing with that second bearing. I'm just going to flush it out with that penetrating oil. Turn the other one over too while I'm at it. Just leave that right on my desk. And probably doesn't hurt to put a little bit of that on here to loosen that dried grease in the channel. Well, a lot of what you want to do when you're servicing a reel is basically get the old greases and oils out of there, check for defects, clean it all up, and re-lube it. That's your basic service on a reel. I prefer to take the reels completely apart. There are folks out there that just give it an eyeball. If it looks okay, they just simply re-grease and re-lube. And I think if you're doing it yourself, particularly if you're doing it yourself on somebody else's reel, but I guess on yours too, why take a shortcut? It's not worth it in the end, and you never know what you're going to find. Just when you think that something is right, well, it may not be. I'm using a brush now to clear out the channels in the main gear. It's a substantial piece of metal. It's not junk, that's for sure. And while I've got that other stuff sitting there, I'm going to clean out the old greases that are on the crosswind block here. And there's a little bit of dirt there, so let's get that out. Same thing here. So I keep a variety of picks and other tools on my bench. Things that can fit in little holes like that and kind of knock the greases out and so on. All right, so the main pieces below, we've got a 3-ball bearing reel. I'm impressed with that. Kind of looks a little bit like the Daiwa C series, the 4000C series. And I don't know, again, what the differences are here. All right, well, we've got a rotor nut we're going to take off next. Write down some of that. That looks to be a 12mm nut. I have a 12mm socket tool here. It kind of belongs to a Mitchell. You don't need that. In this case, there's not a big lip on this rotor, so you could take that off with a open-end box wrench if you wanted to. All right, that should come up now and off. We have a little attachment here on the back. You need to pay attention to that. With that little opening there, the U-shaped opening. There is a U-shape on this anti-reverse dog here, and you're going to want to make sure that when we go to set that U from the clip here meshes with the U on that. That's going to be an eccentric kind of a close to your operation. I'm going to remove the click ratchet, and now there's 2 screws that are holding on the pinion gear, so let's go ahead and take those out. And while I'm doing that, I want to encourage you to ask questions if you have a question, whether it's on this reel or maybe you're working on a reel where you're a little bit stuck at the moment, or maybe you just want to know a little bit more about the Daiwa reels of the time or the setups and so on. If you ask those questions, I'll try to get you an answer to those. I noticed that if I flipped the anti-reverse to the on position, I can clear that screw without taking the anti-reverse dog off. So we're going to do that. If you happen to have this reel and for whatever reasons took this assembly off and you're watching this video because you're trying to figure out how that anti-reverse works, here's your note. You have a long tag of your spring here. Looks like it coils around that screw 2 or 3 times, comes under the dog, and you'll see a hook here that's going to keep the pressure pointed in. That's how you would set that spring. In the event that you took that piece off, you do not need to take that piece off as part of the general service. Same thing goes with the bail. You do not need to remove the bail unless, of course, you're having problems with the bail. And what's the problems? Well, maybe you dumped this reel in the ocean. There's all kinds of things that could have happened. And if you have that problem, then by all means, go ahead and take that bail off, clean up the sand. There's 2 kind of screws that'll give you the access there. Clean it all off and put it back together again. All right. Well, we want to remove this bearing. To do that, I guess I got to do a couple of things. It's a little stuck. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil on there, see if I can't get that to seep around the case. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this rotor back on without the tie downs. Just put that on with a rotor nut. And I'm going to use that as a handle to pull that assembly out. See how easy it came out? You just need a little bit of leverage sometimes. All right, well, let's take that off. I'll take credit for the little rotor experience there. It may have been that the penetrating oil was more than enough. So on this side of the bail, there's nothing. There's just a dead end that goes behind that shield. This side has a spring in it. Again, I prefer to just use penetrating oil. As long as it can flip it and flop it, then we're okay. Let's take this bearing off. I'm going to do the same thing here. This is a shielded bearing. It's not a sealed bearing. So if you put a good healthy drink of oil onto that, and now we're going to oil the other bearings. I oil bearings. I do not put grease on them. I think grease eventually traps the dirt and wears the bearing down. You have your choice. Okay, back to our brush to clean out the pinion gear. While you're doing this, you want to inspect all of the teeth on that pinion gear, and you want to make sure that all of this is clean. I'll do one more quick spray on that just to see if I can't dissolve a little bit of that. If you like, if you have long fingernails, I don't, you can run the paper towel through there. You can use a pick. These channels are clean. There's not much going on inside of here. That's good to see. So for the few extra dollars I may have paid for a reel that isn't exactly what I thought it was, we find out we've got a nice reel here with the 3-ball bearing setup. Tried and true design, and overall pretty darn clean. And it was operating, I have to be honest, it was operating pretty clean when I tested it. So you always want to test a flea market reel before you make a bid on the reel. You want to make sure that if you notice any defects, you take that into consideration when you offer a price. And if there's too many defects, just walk away because you're just buying somebody else's problem. All right, the case is clean. I've re-greased those 2 slots. A little bit of oil here. That's all you need on this little override piece. And now we can go ahead and put that back together. All we do, we're going to make sure that we grease the base of the pinion gear. And this reel hasn't seen grease in quite some time, so make sure that you give it a healthy dose. Let's remember, if you overload, that's just going to go into the sides of the cases, so don't go crazy with the grease, but get a nice amount in there. And I know that's like the way my mom used to bake and say a little bit of that, whatever the heck a little bit of that is, but a good amount, nice amount. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reinsert this then. Pushing down on the pinion gear, pushing down on the bearing. Make sure that your bearing is flush to the rim. Then go to your parts tray and get those 2 screws that are tying it down. They use the head of the screw as the clamp for that bearing. So this one's kind of an interesting one. It's an oddball to me. As I said, I'm familiar with the more upper end line of the Whisker series. I'm not familiar with this one. I'd have to say that this may have been introduced first, or maybe he was just trying to capitalize on it, but I think this is an early edition of it. And I went through the Daiwa catalogs from the 1980s. I did not find this reel in there, even in the miscellaneous reel schematics. So I was kind of curious. All right, well, we've got those 2 screws now holding that down. Let's go ahead and load this now. So we mentioned that you've got to aim for this U here. And I know right now I've got that U set up against that arm there. So if we do this, kind of looking over the back of it, we should get close. Now the problem is that this is when you got a sight. I'm looking over the top. I don't think we got it. Oh, silly me. You gotta go put your adjuster star on. Put your adjuster star on first. That's why that parts tray is so helpful. All right. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line this up. There you go. So see, Daiwa's smarter than I am. No kidding. What Daiwa has done is they've given you 2 holes in the rotor here. And you can put the U right in the middle of that hole. And then as you go to load up, there we go. You can sight it. There you go. You can see it now as opposed to guessing. If you look through that little hole there, you'll see that we're on the little stud. And now we can just finish up that top. Go ahead and reinstall the rotor nut. Tighten it down. Give it a spin. It spins nicely. And now you can actually test your bail as well. Spring it around and that'll flip nicely as well. While I got all this stuff off, I'm going to run a cotton swab inside the bail arms there. I just noticed there's some dirt in here. I'm going to, hopefully I can use these part numbers. I don't know if it'll show up. E0074-1 as the rotor. Maybe that'll tell me what it belongs on. All right, let's take one of these bearings, put that in the back case. Again, you want to do the same thing. You need to make sure that they seat down nice and firm and that they're inside the lip of the case there. Now we can take our main gear and re-grease and re-lube that. So there's a lot of fans of Daiwa out there. I was quite honestly amazed that ORCA, which is the Old Reel Collectors Association, has a library there available to members where you can pretty much find an awful lot of the schematics and old fishing reel information and the like, catalogs and the like. And I went on there and they had a catalog of all of the schematics for Daiwa for the 1980s. 129 pages of all of the various models, and this one wasn't one of them. And I just found it crazy that they had that many models. Of course, it's across all of the lines. working that across all of the lines that they carried. So bait casters and saltwater trolling reels like the sea lines, and of course a lot of spinning reels. Okay, the main gear is in, the crosswind block is in. I'm going to grab this axle shaft now, put a light coating of grease on there, and I mean a light coating of grease. Anything more than that, when you insert it through your pinion gear here, is just going to rub off. Find the flat side of the axle shaft, bring that down, and merge that into your crosswind block. Make sure it's seated so that your screw hole lines up. And now we want to bring this over and put the tie down screw in there. So a relatively simple reel to service. So what I like to do is I like to encourage folks to service their fishing reels at least once a year. It just doesn't take that long and is well worth the time spent. Okay, we want to insert the pin now. There's a kind of a little slot here, but it's not a flat spot. It kind of goes in an S or wavy pattern. Make sure you're inside that slot. Remember, the shiny side goes down. Then make sure you're on top of that and find that little shim washer that's going to hold that in place. That goes on next. Then the other bearing goes on. There's a closed side and open side to this. Make sure the closed side is facing outwards. Just like the other one with the cleaning, I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner here. This is Penn's rod and reel cleaner. And I'm going to get the side plate before I put it back on because, well, it's easier. And this is where I look and think they probably didn't have a badge on this one, but maybe they did. I don't know. All right, let's go put that back on. You're looking for a nice tight fit. When you hear that snap, you generally have a nice tight fit. 3 side plate screws go on. We'll tighten these up, and then we'll go over and take a look at the drag washer system. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to find in there. I think I'm going to find either Teflon drags or felt washers. But you never know. I was surprised that the internals of this reel is not what I would expect of a Whisker, but that's all right. It's a nice reel anyway. I'm sure it's going to do some nice fishing. The spiral drive Whiskers are still highly sought after today. They've been discontinued, but there's a whole fan base of those out there, so you can imagine when I saw this one, I thought maybe I was getting something. Well, I got something, but it wasn't what I was thinking I might be getting. All right, that cleans that up nicely. You can take a paper towel, wipe that down to get rid of that old grease. Again, do that before you put the handle on. That way it'll shine it right up. Nice shiny reel there, right? All right, let's go over to our spool. There's a 5-sided clip here. You want to use a screwdriver or something to pull that out. It's a spring, so be careful with it. This one has Teflon washers. A lot of Teflon washers, very good. All right, the bottom of this reel case has that little U, so make sure you're aware of that. Right now, I'm going to do some cleaning before I go ahead and put that stack back, just because it's going to be harder to do once we do anything with it. Might as well do the insides of the spool. Again, I like this rod and reel cleaner on a kitchen scrubby. Seems to do a very nice job without a lot of effort. So those of you that are into reselling reels, it's a cheap investment. You can make that reel look so much nicer just from cleaning up some of the old fish scales and dirt, and grease and film and whatever else is on there relatively easily. All right, we've cleaned the inside of the cavity. Tried our best to kind of clean in those serrated edges and so on. Here's your first one in. Those go on the side slots. And now we should have a traditional 6 drag washer setup. The top one is a kind of a, or the bottom one actually is kind of a leathery one. Then we have 2 Teflon washers on top of that. You have 2 round, or what's called keyed washers, and you have 1 eared washer in the middle. I believe the Teflons are going to go in first. So Teflon, one of the keyed washers, that's the one with the rectangle in the center, another Teflon washer, and then the reason why they put that U groove in that piece, you got the 2 ears that need to fit inside those grooves, like that. We got the kind of leathery one here. Then the top washer, and now we can go ahead and put that spring back in. You go to load the spring, one side goes in the groove, hold it down, it is a spring, and then pull it around. That's a retention clip, that's all it's going to do. If for some reason you've lost that clip somewhere, well, you can still use the reel. Just understand you're probably going to pop those drags all over the place when you go to remove the spool. Speaking of removing, it's lost its little Daiwa badge inside there, but that has no effect on the performance of this reel at all. Okay, tighten it down, make sure that it holds nicely, and back it off. Take the pressure off those drags when you're not using it. We have a collapsible handle here. I'm going to do the same thing with this. Clean it off. This one has a little spring mechanism underneath it that helps it to collapse. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of penetrating oil in there, just in case there's some dirt and debris. And then just work this in and out every now and then. You want to get a little bit of oil onto that elbow there that's going in and out. And now we can go ahead and reinsert the handle into the side plate. And we're almost done and ready for a test. All right. Give it a ride. That's a nice smooth operating reel there. Wow. We have the anti-reverse. Put the anti-reverse override on. So we've done that U connection pretty good in terms of how that's supposed to work. You have a kind of a silent anti-reverse with this one. You don't have that click, click, click going. And you have that bail that's going to hit that bar and trip. Of course, and that's working fine. So that's it, the mystery reel, a Daiwa Whisker without any other information. A couple of part numbers that maybe we can research to find out what model they belong to. Not the traditional Tournament SS one for sure, but a nice reel overall, nice and shiny and clean and ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is you do to keep us safe. To everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks for your subscriptions. And I appreciate everybody who's subscribed so far and encourage you to subscribe if you have not. And I wish you all great fishing and stay healthy and happy. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.